this morning on the EMBA Radio Network.
We find ourselves with our supply chain not, adequate. And, in my mind, that's where I went to reusable. We need a mask that we can wash and reuse over and over again, and that's what the mask does today.
Pivot is a word we've heard a lot during the pandemic, especially for many businesses to survive. Jane Henry, founder of See Her Work, a company that specializes in designing personal safety products sized to unique body needs, went to work immediately on a specialty mask for COVID after learning of tremendous need from a task force group. Henry worked in oil and gas for 2 decades, but it was cleanup at her flooded home following Hurricane Harvey that sparked the idea of See Her Work.
And I go to throw the board in the dumpster, and my unisex glove flies off, and I slam my hand between the board and the wall of the dumpster. And I guess at that point, I just really needed to get angry at something, and so I got really, really angry at the glove.
She spent the last couple of years manufacturing and selling specialized workwear, safety equipment, and other job-specific products. Good morning, Jane. How are you doing?
Wonderful, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, we want to start with your most recent work. I know you've been very actively trying to come up with a face mask, and your mission, this really aligns with your mission, but it looks like you're also, going in the COVID direction and just trying to adapt at this time.
That's exactly what we're doing. It's funny. Ever since the inception of See Her Work, not too long ago, I would say just over 2.5 years now, we really set out to innovate the PPE industry. So when this fell on our lap, and quite literally because I have brothers that are firefighters, it just seemed like a perfect opportunity for us to jump in and see what we could do in partnership with some of the task forces that have kicked off here in Houston.
What are you trying to do with your mask in particular?
So the objective, the long-term objective is, and this really came from a special Texas Medical Center task force that, brought the idea to us, which I love because we love when people are like, hey, what do you think about? And then it's like, all right, that's when we can really kick into gear and think about how we can use the supply chain, the manufacturers in a slightly different way to accomplish the objective. So the objective that the TMC task force put out was to create a reusable N95. Okay. So what we did is we went and contacted our raw material manufacturers, and they gave us some great ideas and started to put some combinations together. When things started to ramp up about this potential of reopening Texas, we got a little clearer about, short, mid, and long-term solutions for the masks. So we're still on the mission of creating a reusable N95. Right now, we have a mask that we are tentatively, until we get, FDA's approval, they don't really have a way to describe this mask just yet. That's how cool it is. That's cool. So we're just calling it the Surgical Plus at the moment. But what it is it's a combination of medical fabrics that are already in use today. So they're already in mass production, and I think that's key. So have been tested with people, skin tests, those sort of things. And the combination of them, the external layer kills on contact 99.9% of bacterial and viruses that hit it. Now, the inner layer is a fluid penetration layer. It's another medical grade fabric, often used in like scrubs and gowns, right? So the combination of the two, we're not filtering, which is the hard part. But we are filtering to an extent. It's like 60%. But the important part is if it's coming near, the areas that you could catch, COVID-19 on, it's being killed by this outer layer. And it's pretty cool. We're very, very excited about it. So right now we're just kind of testing the market and, making sure the fit, we really worked hard on both male and female, back to the See Her Work original mission. So we have 3 sizes that get a really secure fit in there. And then we just to kind of test the market and what people were looking for, we also have just a basic surgical mask that doesn't have that fit that you would get from a more on the respirator side of a mask. So it's pretty exciting. We can't wait to see what comes of it. Lots of interest from normal folks like you and me, and then the doctors and the healthcare providers and employers, and mostly coming from the fact that Texas is not deemed a hot zone, and since hence why we're reopening. The problem with that is, while it might seem good on the surface, that means that a lot of those 3M masks that are being developed, that 100 million that we've heard about, are not coming here. FEMA is sending them to hot zones. So again, we find ourselves with our supply chain not, adequate. And, in my mind, that's where I went to reusable. We need a mask that we can wash and reuse over and over again, and that's what the mask does today. It's got a minimum durability, and that's just a recommendation of 75 washes.
A very practical approach, especially for those who aren't in the medical field. We don't have a crystal ball, but looking forward, do you see the wearing of masks as something that is going to continue beyond COVID, 2 to 3 years out?
Well, so I the wearing of masks, yes. The wearing of masks from a COVID perspective, I'm not a doctor, but from the interviews and the research that I've done, time, we will build up our immunity. We won't, we will have advanced medications. I know there's lots of folks working on those things. So I don't think it's forever. But, the positive out of all of this is just the whole idea of reusable PPE that's still safe, that's cost effective, as a way of reducing our demand, reducing our dependency on disposable. I think it's just cool, and I don't think that'll go away. I think it's just it's the right way to go to make sure that we keep our country protected.
Take me back to the birth of See Her Work and how this all came about from an experience I guess you had with Harvey, right?
Yes. Well, even prior to that, so this isn't my first company. This is my third company, and I said I wouldn't do it again. I actually went to Rice to get my EMBA so that I would stop being an entrepreneur, to only have them prove that I am an entrepreneur. So I laugh about that often. But I love our network. Oh my gosh, we have such a great network. It's such knowledgeable people. It makes entrepreneurship in general a heck of a lot easier. My first company, we got hit by oil price pretty hard. So I enrolled in the program, trying to figure out who I wanted to be when I grow up. And I was kind of thinking a product-based business. I like the idea of the scalability of a product-based business. And, then I get hit by Hurricane Harvey. And, Harvey wiped me out. I had 3 feet of mud and tar in my house. It was pretty nasty. And, I had volunteers for the first week, which was amazing. Most of them Rice folks, and I just can't appreciate them enough for what they did for me. But then the insurance company held the check for 4 months. So I'm not one to sit back. I start getting work to work on my house, because it really is just me at this point. And I could live with my mom, but that's a whole other story. Love her. Not going to happen. So anyway, I started to get work on my house, and and I put PPE on every once in a while. I mean, I've been in oil and gas for over 20 years. And I thought, well, it just sucks, right? But then when you're having to wear it every single day, it gets exhausting. And part of my background as well is I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters, and there was no way I was going to go to college without a full scholarship. And so I was a Division I all-scholar athlete for the University of Arkansas. And when I tell people that, the reason why that's important is I know in order to play and at that level, clothing and equipment matters. And I think a lot of athletes can appreciate that. So I looked down I end up, I'm mucking out the house. I'm throwing a board into the dumpster, and I go to throw the board in the dumpster, and my unisex glove flies off, and I slam my hand between the board and the wall of the dumpster. And I guess at that point, I just really needed to get angry at something, and so I got really, really angry at the glove. So the other thing I didn't mention was I've been sewing for years. I'm by far the youngest that goes to sewing national conferences. Yes, Sew-a-Palooza exists. Look it up. I've got lots of grannies that love me, and I call on a regular basis when I don't know things. It's wonderful. So I go upstairs and I use my ripper, and I rip the seams out of my glove, and I lay it down, and I repattern it for my size, because I'm sitting there thinking, I'm a lady's large athletic glove. What do the extra smalls do as I'm doing this, right? And so then, I end up sewing it, and then I'm like, all right, that'll work. I clip it to my belt. That's kind of what you do. And I'm going to Lowe's to pick up some more material, and I get stopped at Lowe's, and the lady goes, hey, where'd you get the glove? I'm like, Frankenstein. I just made it. So, I didn't act right at that moment. We had one of our amazing, classes. I love Al Danto. I think he's exceptionally bright, just a great advocate and connection. I took his new enterprise class, and I brought the idea to the class, and I'll say that we had like 60 people in the class, and most of them were like, what? PPE for women? That's a stupid idea. But, I'm like, this isn't my first rodeo, so I'll fill out the business model canvas, and I'll spend a month, and my whole thing is, before I invest my time in anything, I try to kill it before somebody else does. I call it the is my baby ugly stage. And so I took the business model canvas, and I conducted about 50 focus groups across the nation. There's 15 to 20 women each, safety professional, as well as a supply chain professional in each session, and the audible gasps that they would hear from the women were just unreal. And this was early on, right? So this is 2.5 years ago. And again, I'd apply to pitch competitions, and people looked at me like I was crazy. Well, I just Googled PPE. There's plenty of women's PPE. That's where everything started, and that's where the term pink it and shrink it, I got it out of the focus groups, came from.
Yes.
And I just found, this need that I needed to advocate for these women so that they could do their job effectively. Plus, it's a benefit for the employers because they're having labor shortages. So it just seems like a win-win, tap into this 50% of the workforce that we really haven't provided gear for, and maybe we wouldn't have so much trouble with our production.
I can certainly relate when you were talking about the glove. I'm on the other end. My hands are so small. I can wear children's like snow gloves or, ski gloves. And I come from, a journalism background, but there were many stories that I would have to put on PPE. And I can't tell you how many times I remember I could hardly walk. It was like bagging off me and hanging off of me. And so that's my very limited experience, but I certainly can relate and understand.
No, that's exactly what we heard. Since then I've conducted a bunch of lunch and learns. I do like a 1 hour, this is pre-COVID, right? But I would do a 1 hour presentation to employers and people, just explain the kind of the journey and what I learned through it. And I did one, and then I set up, downstairs with some of the products that we sell online at Lowe's now. And I just kind of set it up downstairs for people to play with. I had a gal fast walk up to me, no running in a safety environment, but fast walk up to me and almost tackle me in tears, saying, no one's asked me about my coveralls before. It has been so hard. I am so thankful for what you are doing. And I just was like, it just caught me off guard because, my job for the last 2 years is really about just, creating the awareness so that we could approach this differently. And before COVID, it was getting there, and I still think it's there. It's just a slower pace than prior than that. Lots of commitment from Fortune 50s to really invest in the innovations that are required so that we can fully engage both the men and the women, because the men are having some trouble too. It's about creating one operating team and that's the mission.
And, the point of PPE is safety, but I would imagine, and I think you've mentioned this before, in situations if it's hanging off of you or could get caught in some machinery because it's too big, it defeats the purpose and might make it even more dangerous than not wearing anything.
No, you're spot on. Women would talk to us about, there would be, handling some heavy duty chemicals. Their glove would slip off and they'd almost fall in, and it's just things like that. Or, with the coveralls, they often refer to it as the penguin style because their crotch is so low. It's a massive tripping hazard. It's just, like I said, the stories they tell are really, really powerful. And I'm glad now it's a regular conversation. I think a year into it, I was banging a big old drum. I would do marathons in my gear just to raise awareness. And helmet, the updated do-rag, as I call it, my safety vest, my gloves, carrying a sledgehammer. It was a year after doing all that that one of my friends said, "Hey, we get it. You don't have to preach so much." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Given the current environment, where do you see your company going now?
Well, I couldn't be more excited. It's like the engagement and the understanding. So the Texas Medical Center Task Force introduced me to the military. And even though I conducted some interviews with the military prior, I hadn't really engaged them as a potential employer for the products. I was going after construction as kind of my beachhead initially. But they love the mask, and they love the potential, and they love the objective of getting to a reusable N95. So we are, it was interesting. I had to pull, anybody that knows, I learned about SBIR grants very quickly. I was very happy to have my consulting background as I pulled off a proposal in a day and a half, plus a video I had to record. That was interesting, at 3 a.m. Submitted it. But at that, they seemed very excited about it, and that is a game changer. So that was kind of like somebody, coming up to me and saying, "Jane, if I gave you a blank check, what would you do with it?" Well, if you gave me a blank check, I would start a small product development, manufacturing entity, see her work, but like a facility here in Houston, the greater Houston area, right? And it would act as a hub for innovation and really to look at the PPE supply chain differently. And when I say hub, like we're doing with the mask, our intention here is, let's leverage factories that are in trouble, that have the capability but don't have the orders because the retail orders got cut off. So let's leverage them. They can stand up the factories to produce, but we need to do the prototyping and the testing and those sort of things here. So that's the future right now. After writing the proposal, I'm more bought in than ever, especially if we can save lives, especially if we can, I'm all about, I don't want to be in a position where we are taking a proactive attack on something like this. And that's what this is to me, right? Is let's look at this risk, COVID, and let's say no more. And let's lean in and let's attack this. And so for me, that's the future. Beyond this, I would hope that people see her work mission and the importance of, one operating team and creating innovative solutions for both the men and the women in the same capacity, so that we could do that R&D here and then leverage these great facilities that already exist in America to produce. So that's the goal.
Jane, you've had success with more than one company. What advice would you give entrepreneurs, and maybe specifically female entrepreneurs?
Gosh, that's a great question, because I am a part of a huge group of female entrepreneurs. There's 16,000 of us. I sit on the board of directors for them. It's a Women's Business Enterprise National Council, WeBank. And, I have to admit, I still struggle, okay? And a lot of people are like, really, Jane? I'm like, no, I really do. And I think this goes for men and women, but I think women, we tend to not do it as much. We got to own our space. And what kills me is, I mention WeBank a lot. And these are women that are hard-working, probably each worth, on average $50 million plus, that have really been there and back. And they're so humble. They're underutilized, untapped, and it just cracks me up, because I'm like, it's like this diamond that people don't know about but need to leverage. But part of it is our fault. Is we tend to take this this humble approach to our work, and I think as an entrepreneur, part of the success of entrepreneurs is being a little narcissistic. And embracing that, because you get beat down constantly, and you just gotta you get to the point where you dust yourself off and you keep rolling, and constantly pivoting and moving, and not being afraid to reach out and to your network, which is why I appreciate the Rice Network so much, because I do not know everything, but our network, my goodness, we have. I mean, Christine, I'm just like, didn't know you were part of this class, and I feel blessed to be on with you today. And I'm thinking, your media talent and where this is going, I'm bought in. It's like, how do we leverage our unique skill sets in a way where we can really game change these industries?
Well, and we've seen small businesses suffering because of COVID. Are you optimistic on the other side of this that, we're going to see a rebound? And I know we're already seeing a lot of innovation and pivots. I mean, you yourself are an example of that.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're seeing is that natural curve, right? So, unfortunately, dealing with Harvey, dealing with the oil price that hit my company that I love so much, 35 consultants, and having to shut down because of oil price, that wasn't fun. But now I see a clear cycle, right, in trauma. And it starts with a little bit of fog, and then you really the fear sets in, and then it's like you go into this little bit of, oh my gosh, I've worked so hard, and you recognize everything you've lost, but then the cabin fever starts to set in. And you get this like need to get kind of, I always call it embrace the suck. And you embrace the suck, and then the innovation really starts to happen. And so I'm a big believer that good things happen out of bad things. I do believe we're all going to be fine. I think we'll all learn some life lessons. For me, I was kind of going, man, I've been kind of struggling since the hurricane, so this didn't really impact me that much, but I see how much it's impacting other folks that maybe haven't experienced this much change recently. But I am seeing them turning around and coming up with some really, really innovative ideas. I think it's pretty cool.
I think you could have your own list, call it Jane Henry's Steps to Recovery or something like that.
I know. I do. Well, I do. I've got, I could probably give you a few. I've got a whole thing on, not written in any book, because I'm actually dyslexic. So I'm very fearful of writing, and, appreciate folks like you that are great at articulating messages and getting them out to the public, because I'm not so good at it. But I got these steps to entrepreneurship, and, I start with is my baby ugly? That's stage one. And then it's gorilla. And it's just all about really, getting the word out and creating awareness. Then I call it the awkward teenager zone. And it's like, I'm famous, but still broke. What do I do? And then, then you get into whitewater, which is, it's just a little bit too much work. I actually need to hire, really invest in hire people. And then, because it's time to make this more repeatable. And then you get into predictable success, which is really about optimizing the different people you bring in and, creating that diversity of thought so you're continuing to innovate. And then the last stage I call the Death Watch beetle, and that comes from the Practical Magic movie. So anybody that's seen it, there's a beetle that chirps to tell them that their husband's going to die, right? And I swear I heard it with my first company. But you don't want to admit it. You're like, chirp, chirp, no, doesn't exist. But, that's the real opportunity to say, all right, if I'm hearing the chirp, it's kind of in that innovate or die mode. So anyway, yeah, I've got lots of little, I call it the street version.
Right.
I have a lot of compassion, and Christine, even when you shared with me that you're graduating this year, and my heart goes out to you and your graduating class. I know for me, graduating was beautiful. It was a great ceremony, but then, I felt almost a hangover. Where are my MBA friends? Like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with myself now? And and I can't even imagine what all of you are going through. So I guess my thought is I'm just proud of you for doing these things that you're doing right now, and keep on keeping on, because we need people like you to help us feel still connected and a part of this community. And I think we just need to keep on leaning on each other as much as possible.
Absolutely. Very well said. Jane Henry from See Her Work, we appreciate you joining us this morning, and we wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you. You too.
For more information, go to seeherwork.com. You can follow them on social media. You've been listening to the EMBA Radio Network, a production of Dobbin Digital Media.